Brought to you by CGTN Europe.
Hello and welcome to this week's Razor podcast. I'm Shanice O'Mara.
And I'm Emma Keeling. Coming up in this edition of Razor,
Javid Abdelmoneim takes a look at a revolutionary new therapy that's changing the lives for dementia patients.
We know that the stroke patient, when they're admitted and after the first stroke, get a depression. It's a perfect cohort to investigate non-admitted patient after stroke.
and I look at new technology that could change the game for amputees.
It's just mind-blowing how much your hands do that I didn't respect and I didn't appreciate. I don't think anyone does.
Looks like razors healing the world today.
Oh, just another day in scientific paradise, Shani.
Every year there are around 1 million amputations globally. That's one every 30 seconds. But not everybody can afford a bionic limb or even a basic prosthetic. But one scientist wants to change all of that.
Yeah, I went to speak to a professor at Glasgow University about a new technology that could be revolutionary for amputees. It's a prosthetic arm powered by solar panels and also gives real tactile feedback, like a real limb.
That sounds amazing, but how does it work? Is it expensive? What sorts of...
Whoa. The producer told me we weren't allowed to answer lots of questions in bulk. And, you know me, I always follow the rules. So, we'll get to everything in a minute. But first, I do want to introduce you to Corinne Hutton. She is amazing. Now, she had her hands and feet amputated after suffering acute pneumonia and sepsis. And she spoke about her challenges and how exciting this new tech can be.
Well, anything that can improve prosthetics for hands, legs for that matter, but in this particular instance, hands, anything that could solve that touch and feel problem, anything that would alert you to mirror as close as possible the human hands and what they do.
Would be a game changer.
Absolutely. It's just mind-blowing how much your hands do that I didn't respect and I didn't appreciate. I don't think anyone does until they're not there.
It's definitely clear that it's a pressing issue for people living with prostheses, but this technology is moving at breakneck speed. What's the bottleneck?
Well, I think if you want the really fantastic, bionic prosthetic, it does come down to money. State-of-the-art prosthesis can cost thousands of pounds, and the research and production can also be prohibitively expensive. So I spoke to one of the surgeons who did Corinne's amputation. This is Professor Andrew Hart, and he talked about some of the challenges involved in creating these prostheses.
I think there's a few gaps. The first thing people always ask for is just a hand for cosmesis, for appearance, and the technicians, they're just beautiful artists, so they can make fabulously realistic hands, but they don't move. So just like I'm doing now, you look at somebody's hands as the movement and interaction and how it's working in the world. So the cosmetic hands are beautiful in a photograph, but as soon as somebody starts moving, because they don't have movement and action, they don't look natural, and so people tend to put those away. And the more old-fashioned prosthetics could be quite effective for certain tasks, so even simple things like the hook hands and clasp hands, they could let you do quite heavy work, but they don't look right and they don't let you do the finer functions. So really what people want to move beyond that is to get into motorised prosthetics, or the bionic prosthetics. And there's a range of companies around the world, including in Scotland, which do beautiful prostheses that have motors and batteries and increasing amounts of motor control, so they may read out from muscles in your arm or your chest.
There seems to be so many different layers and complexities to this technology, but I can kind of get the whole picture now.
Yeah, I think it's almost like when I first went there are so many, as you're talking about, these layers. It's so many. It's a complex bit of engineering. So he's trying to merge. Well, the Professor Ravinder Dahiya, who is the man behind this prosthetic, he's trying to merge two very complex areas of science here. So what Professor Hart was saying, the man behind this prosthetic, he does this so well, understanding how the brain talks to the body and then vice versa, because obviously these two things are very different, and maybe you don't understand that, because when you're operating or trying to pick up a cup or something like that, you're just picking up a cup. But to actually understand that on a minute level is quite mind-blowing, and it took a long time to explain to me.
But what's the next step?
Well, Professor Dahiya and his team at Glasgow University with input from people like Professor Hart, they've developed this new solar-powered e-skin, and it powers the motors and the touch sensors. And so it could be life-changing for people like Corinne. But I do want to add in here, there's a lot of 3D printing involved, which means it's going to be a lot cheaper than these bionic hands, which means people in places like India and Africa will actually be able to afford something like this.
Don't you just love it when technology helps technology?
So in the fingers, currently we have the capacitive sensors here, but we have much better solution for the finger, which can have capacitive and temperature sensors all integrated into the fingers.
Okay.
Yes. So in this case, the key point is you are generating energy. And that energy.
So what's happening here is Dr. Ravinder is showing Corinne the solar-powered hand. And when I was there, you could see the light in her eyes because she's coming to grips. She was so shocked. She's coming to grips with what this could mean for her and people like her. I mean, the main issue for people with prosthetics is they don't have that tactile feedback. So, even if you've got a bionic hand, picking things up, you don't know how hard to squeeze. So if she can have that kind of feedback, even if she's trying to pick up an egg, I mean, that would be mind-blowing for her.
Fantastic. Great, thanks for showing me that.
Yeah.
If it was an egg, would it crush it?
If it was
An egg?
Well, it wouldn't, because you have the touch feedback also from the fingertips.
So he was to stop?
So based on the amount of force you apply, the motor will stop. There's a closed loop system. It works in that way.
So it can be that sensitive?
Oh yes, yes. So
excellent.
Depending on different quality of sensors, you may have range of sensitivity. Right. We aim to achieve same sensitivity as humans.
Okay.
Yes.
Are we there yet?
Well, we are, in some sense we are there. In other senses, if you talk about the kind of normal hand, I would say no, we are not there. Yeah. But in terms of functionalities, some functionalities we are quite good.
That is mind-blowing, isn't it?
Yes. I mean, there are some functionalities which are not there in our skin. For example, energy generation.
No.
But in that sense, we have better options.
Yeah. Even better.
Yeah.
This is superhuman, isn't it?
Well,
not just human.
Yeah.
We don't want to be human. We want to be
well, that's actually the interesting aspect of any artificial system, that you can develop something which not just augments your capacity, it can actually make it even better in terms of, yes.
That's incredible. Wouldn't it be great for our amputees to be not just...
Well, you must have seen the example of this blade running thing,
Yeah, I have blades.
That just actually
Could
helps
you
you.
be better?
Yes.
Could you be even faster?
Even faster.
Yeah, super. We're working on that. Super.
There seems to be so much to work out. I mean, just the concept of trying to hold an egg in this prosthetic hand is so visual. But how far away are we from something like this becoming an everyday reality for people like Corinne?
Yeah, well, I think you're a bit like me. You go and see these incredible, developments in tech, and they always sort of seem to say the same thing. 5 or 10 years, we'll have it on the market. But I was really shocked when Professor Ravinder said to me, we have a goal. I want this to be available on the market at the end of 2020 or early.
That soon?
I know. I think his staff were a bit shocked.
They were like, what? You didn't tell us that.
But I guess that's the joy of having something that, made with 3D printing. And, we're seeing the world change with 3D printing, aren't we? So if you've got that basic structure and then you're able to print the electronics into it or put sensors on it, and so the speed of developing something like that is a lot faster.
Yeah, often it's about knowing the concept, and that can be the time-consuming bit. But if you've already established that, then it's about just creating the technology. What was it like meeting Corinne? Because she sounds like a really level-headed, grounded person.
She is a hoot. She's from Glasgow, and that accent is very, very thick at times. I had to keep saying, I'm sorry.
She was probably saying the same thing about you.
Exactly, my Kiwi accent. I certainly confused her parents. But yeah, she's incredible, and she's now actually got a double hand transplant, and she is but hugely involved in the amputee community. So for her to sort of pass on what she saw with Professor Ravinder and sort of create that hope and excitement with the people, I think she was really thrilled with what she saw in the lab.
People like her are so inspiring because they've gone through so much hardship, but yet they're using that as a way to advance technology. I find that incredible.
Yeah, she can see the gaps, and so her sort of talking to Dr. Ravinder, I think it was fantastic to watch them in the lab together. That was one of my better ideas, I must say. Get Corinne into the lab. I don't know who told me to do that, the scientist gods or the journalist gods, but it worked a treat.
3D printing is one of my absolute loves. It's basically this opportunity to create a three-dimensional model. And the way it works is that there's this powdered material. It could be titanium, another sort of metal, or some kind of plastic. And just in the same way that a 2D printer works, it takes a molecule of that material and it fuses another molecule of that material together using lasers.
And it all happens in a box.
Yeah.
And it's very, very slow, but just incredible because it sort of goes layer by layer. It builds up the whatever it is it's trying to build.
Yeah, I guess it's the easiest way to think about it is to think of a two-dimensional printer that we all use. A 2D printer will place a dot next to another dot and you can build up characters in 2 dimensions. 3D printer does the exact same thing, but in 3-dimensional space. So it's basically placing a bunch of dots together and building it up in 3 dimensions, fusing all of those printing ink dots together with lasers or heat.
And it squirts it out a little nozzle and go. It's a little bit like squeezing out a tube of toothpaste. Layer by layer, isn't it?
Yeah. And what's incredible is that after you've 3D printed something, you pull the 3D printed object out of this dust and you kind of like brush it off. And so you can recover the unused 3D printing material and use it for another 3D print. And so it's just a very efficient way of creating objects. How does the charging work together with movement? Because that's quite incredible that it's kind of almost self-sustaining.
So you mean so you're meaning like charging a motor or making a motor work, or?
Yeah. When I was listening to one of the clips, it seemed like it would self-power based on Corinne's movements. Is that true?
No. So the power is. I mean, she tells the hand what to do. I want to do this, and which is done with a sort of a set of movements within the stump of the hand on the end of the prosthetic, and then that tells the thing, move this finger or move these fingers to pick something up. But what's happening with the solar power and the supercapacitor? How usually you would store energy in a battery, where a supercapacitor can discharge and recharge over and over and over again. So if it's constantly getting power from solar, then it's never ending. So it just charges and discharges and charges and discharges.
It's just so clever. Love it.
Now, we all know that sunlight is important for vitamin D and getting a good tan, although we're not supposed to do that anymore, so please wear sunscreen. But it does feel good to be in the sunshine.
Oh, so good.
And it's also very important for our circadian rhythm, which is basically our internal body clock.
That's right. However, we also know that it can play a big role in people's mental health and also their personal happiness.
Exactly. And scientists have found out that something as simple as changing the type of lighting in, say, places like hospitals and care homes can have a profound influence on certain types of patients, like stroke victims, for example. Now, Javid Abdelmoneim went to speak to Dr. Andrew West about this revolutionary therapy in Copenhagen.
We know that the stroke patient, when they're admitted and after their first stroke, get a depression. 1/3 of a stroke patient get a real clinical depression. Gosh. And not because of their paralyzed. Actually, it's a chemistry change in the brain that do that they get a depression. And they also get a huge degree of fatigue and anxiety, and of course decreased mobility and so on. So it's a patient cohort which have a huge amount of complication. And when we look at the circadian rhythm, we can see at the function, the part the circadian rhythm regulates, it actually a lot of the complication we see in stroke patient. So it's a perfect cohort to investigate long admitted patient after stroke.
So you have them here for a while. So
I have them in my hands for a while. Probably a month in average, and they don't have the possibility to go outside. They only get light through the windows because they are mobilized in the bed only. So we did a study to actually look at the circadian rhythm, and actually we know now that the blue light spectrum that I regulate properly some research is also, we know that activity and food intake also regulate the circadian rhythm. So we want to see if we can change the circadian rhythm and reduce the complication. We did that with installing circadian light in the entire unit.
So what does a circadian lighting system look like, and how exactly does it work?
I probably briefly better say, because a lot of people might say, I don't know what a circadian rhythm is. And it's pretty much certain processes in the body are triggered by, light, natural light. So whether it's bright light of midday or, the amber light in the morning, etc., etc. So what these, lots of little LED lights in this sort of lumiere, they're mimicking the 24-hour day. So it's a slow fade from more amber hue in the morning to a bluish white light at midday, and then they fade to amber again in the evening. And the spectrum matches the spectrum we see with our eyes throughout the day. So it stimulates a part of the brain that controls a lot of our internal processes. Whereas, artificial light, it's one tone, it's one spectrum, it's one colour all day. And so it's not triggering those processes to tell us to rest or to sleep or to be awake.
Did you have a go on it? Like, could you actually feel the difference of the different types of light?
No, when we went to one of the rest homes there, and we were standing there, and I was like, oh, it's getting darker, because we were in there in the evening. And of course, it's on a slow fade. It wasn't getting darker as such, but the colour tone was changing from sort of quite bright, and it was slowly getting a sort of a more amber tone to it. But I mean, from what I spoke to one of the staff members, and I said, how long does it take to sort of adjust to this? And he said, it took 5 months to notice a difference. Oh, wow. So I think, our bodies are set to this fake, artificial light. So I think it does take a while for the body to adapt.
It's brilliant for people that work underground, or like my dark matter detector scientists who are 2 kilometres underground.
They need these lights.
Yeah, they do. But did you actually feel yourself any kind of effect?
No, it was interesting though. My eyes started, playing havoc because, the change in tone. It is quite different. And then they hit a couple of buttons, and they've got a light they call a booster. So it can give you 2 hours of a big boost, and it's sort of a more bluish tone, and it gives you lots of energy. So in the rest home, that was brilliant. So if they're noticing the residents are getting a little bit sluggish, boom, hit the light and off they go.
Wow. So you didn't feel like when you were filming this story that you had this burst of energy or anything?
No, they didn't. They should have hit the booster while I was there, because we just got off the plane and we had to drive all this way. I needed a boost. I should have stood under the light and said, hit me. So basically what they call this light a luminaire, and it's pretty much a container, and it has all these little LED lights.
That's the French word for light, isn't it?
I think that's lumiere, but my French is really rusty. But anyway, so the technology behind this is really interesting, and Javid spoke to Torbin Hansen from Chromoviso, who helped develop this luminaire.
Torbin, so these are the lights that I've seen. I mean, what are the mechanics of them?
Yes, that's a luminaire similar to what we saw at the...
So what Torbin is showing us is actually a big white bowl that almost looks like a basin, and it's got all these little twinkling LED lights in there that they look like tiny little bits of Lego, really.
The total light source as such.
Quite a lot going on here, so is it costly?
Well, it is a quality system, and it is a very powerful luminaire, so obviously it's not the cheapest.
So the benefits for staff and patients economically actually outweigh the cost of putting this in?
Quite fast, yes, quite fast. So it's just within a year in some cases that the return is made.
Gosh, it sounds a lot more complicated and intelligent than just a bunch of lights.
Yeah, it's so simple, but just really, really clever. I mean, with all the artificial light we live under, we've moved away from having that natural light of being, woken up by light in the morning. I mean, we all wake up in the dark and we switch the light on, and it's like, oh, and first thing in the morning. I'm sure you've been through that. But yeah, it's just, and having that 24-hour fade and all these different. But they've noticed with, not only the rest home patients but also the stroke patients. They're less depressive, they're less anxious, and they're feeling, more energised. I mean, one of the staff members at the elderly rest home said to me, I used to get headaches because I used to do all these night shifts, and he says, I don't get the headaches anymore.
Wow, it sounds like a brilliant piece of technology for people that really sort of, work crazy hours in the dark, don't get much sun. I mean, people that live in really sunny countries, sometimes it's too hot to go outside during the day, and they have vitamin D deficiencies. So this is a really great technology for people all around the world.
Yeah, I mean, this is pricey. We didn't really go into numbers, but considering if you've got a normal light switch and wire, it's connected, these have to have wires all connected to the central system. So you've got an awful lot of wiring going all the way throughout the building. Everything has to be plugged in together.
Sounds quite electricity consuming.
Yeah, exactly. So again, you'd have to take all those things into account.
So is this another technology that will be available in 5 to 10 years? Or?
Probably, yeah. Well, it's available now in commercial buildings for rest homes and that sort of thing. But the person who runs the rest home, the council, they were sort of saying, we thought that the benefits outweighed the costs. And he said, seeing, the effect on staff, less days off, seeing the benefits for the patients, they're happier, they're, all those sorts of things. So I guess you're sort of saying, is it technology or is it well-being? Is it cost, is it well-being? Which would you prefer? And so, yeah, they went with the well-being.
Can't put a price on well-being these days.
Sure can't.
That's it for this week. If you want to watch the films from this week's episode, go to cgtn.com/Europe and click on Razor.
Thanks so much for listening. Bye-bye.